Hello everyone, John Richmond here with the Eclectic Cooking Academy. Today, very first lesson of the Cook Like a Pro series. Today we'll be talking about essential cooking tools to help you elevate your cooking and cook like a pro. Coming up in 3 seconds. Today we're going to be talking about some of the essential things that you should probably have in your kitchen if you want to elevate it and cook like a pro. First off, I want to kind of apologize for the introductory, scripted as it was. I tried it a couple of different ways and I found out that that was the way I was going to get across my message. But I assure you, from this lesson on, I think I'm probably going to stay away from anything that's scripted. Anyway, let's get on with things. The first thing I want to talk about very, very briefly is you can't cook unless you've got a heat source. Most people have a stove. Sometimes they're gas, sometimes they're electric. And believe it or not, there's a lot of controversy in the cooking community over, well, which one's best? And do I have to have one way, one or the other? And my answer is, it doesn't make any difference. I will give a slight nod to gas because it is slightly more convenient. But when it comes right down to it, it's all about controlling the heat. And you can control the heat on either gas or electric. It really doesn't make any difference. Both of them have got little controls to change how hot it is, whether the flame's up or down, whether the power on the electric burner is intense or not. But there's other ways to control the heat. Sometimes just lifting it up, taking it a little bit of distance from the surface on an electric one will do the job. And really, it's just opposite of a gas one, where you lower the flame. This one, you just lift up the pan. So I'm here to tell you, it really doesn't make any difference. If you've got electric, don't let anybody tell you that you can't cook. You can. It's what I've got, and it served me pretty well. So the next thing I want to talk about is an instant read thermometer. This little puppy, thank goodness for technology, because it really makes a difference. No longer do you have to slash open that steak on the grill to find out whether the thing's done or not. And you don't got to be pressing here, or pressing wherever that the people that are still back in the 19th and 20th centuries are telling you. They really aren't the answer. You want to cook like a pro, you need an instant read thermometer. I use mine all the time. It's how you can tell that pork is at 145 or the chicken's at 165 or that medium rare steak that you want is around 140, upper 130s. You got to have one. All right, next. Oven thermometer. Grungy, sorry about that. Why do I need an oven thermometer if I've got one of these instant reads? Well, because some things aren't about taking the temperature of whatever it is. You may have a casserole, you may have a cake, you may have whatever in there. And I guarantee you that your oven it's not likely to be accurate. Mine on the upper end is over 50 degrees off. I can set that puppy at 550 degrees and I'm lucky to make 500. Same thing that goes on the bottom. About the only place this thing is accurate is right in that middle range of 325, 350. But even there, it's off a little bit. It's not terribly important, but it's important enough that maybe you're trying to get some color on whatever you have in there, and you think you're at 450 degrees, and you're not. You're at 375. You're at 40 degrees. And your recipe says, well, put it in there for 10 minutes at 450 degrees, and you believe the recipe, because why would the recipe lie? Well, sometimes the recipe does lie, because that's what that cook used, and that's where their oven was set. They didn't know about your oven. This will help you try to figure out exactly what's going on. Once you do, like I do, I hardly pay any attention to this anymore. All right, next, an aluminum skillet. It's what I call a sticky skillet because unlike its nonstick counterpart, you put stuff in here, most of the time it's going to stick. That's not a bad thing. Actually, sometimes that's a good thing. And it's why I've got one and other professional chefs have also. Even with a layer of cooking oil in there, you throw something in, and initially that's going to stick, especially if you throw in some meat. It'll grab hold of that pan really quick. Give it a little bit of time, it'll let go, but it'll also leave some goodies on the bottom. And that's what it's all about. It's creating what we call a fond. All those, well, it doesn't have to be meat. You can also build up fond with some vegetables. But that's a good thing. And then you take some kind of a liquid, cold liquid, and you do what's called a deglaze, and you release all that stuff. It's called layering flavors. Anyway, any serious cook needs to have one of these things. I don't think the brand matters a whole lot. I recommend, and for any of these things I'm showing you, just go on Amazon, go see what other people say about them, use your own judgment, and that's how I do it. I go out there, get the best reviews for the value of the money that I'm paying, and that's typically what I go after. Good nonstick skillet. Some things just need one of these. I use mine not interchangeably, but I use this for different functions, especially if you're going to get into crepes, you're going to get into omelets. It's an absolute must. I know there are some tips and tricks that you can go turn that sticky skillet into a non-stick variety. Why? That's really my question. Why fool around with trying to do that when technology's invented a pan that's made for non-stick applications? We have a set of 3 that we just replaced recently. I love this one. They work great, and after several months, I've hardly got a scratch on it. Next item, chef's knife. You don't need many knives, but this is one that you do need to have. It's very distinctive in the way it looks. I'm not exactly sure what the price on one of these things are. The set that I have, my wife gave me back when I started doing serious cooking. Actually, and it was a set of 4 knives. One of them is a smaller version of this. This is my go-to chef's knife, and it's really served me well. Do you need the other ones? I don't really think so. I hardly ever use them, except for maybe the mini version of this one. But a knife similar to this is an absolute must for a serious home cook, as is this, which is a boning knife or a fillet knife. And it's used for pretty much what it sounds like. It's for separating flesh from bone. It really is an absolute must. I was given this one too, along with some other ones. And really the key, as long as you keep them sharp, they're going to serve you well. Which brings me to my next topic, which is a way to sharpen your knives. There are a lot of different gadgets and different sharpening devices. I use a stone. Mine looks like this. This brand is Sharp Pebble, excuse me. Not going to really matter, but you can go out and do research on your own, and you can decide for yourself whether you want a sharpening tool or a stone. And I say tool because there's some electric ones out there where you run your blade through. The one thing I will tell you about those is that typically those types of sharpeners take away more material when you sharpen. And of course that means the longevity of your knife is going to decrease. With a stone, sometimes all it takes is just a few swipes. Lots of times if I'm getting ready to cut up, just run like this, run like that, just a few times over that surface, and it'll take off that. This right here will become slightly flattened. Really hard to see with the naked eye, but that's what's going on, and that's why it basically isn't nearly as sharp anymore. This takes that little flat edge out when you go one side then the other. I'm quite pleased with this purchase that I made, and I guess if I have a recommendation, I would say a sharpening stone is the way to go. Ramekins. Why Ramekins? Well, there's this time, typically all white. That's a better choice. This is something we just had around the house for a while. We have this that perhaps qualifies as a ramekin. We have this style that still probably falls into that. Why do you need them? Well, first off, we're going to get into this in a future lesson, but if you're going to be serious about your mise en place, which is basically preparing for cooking and getting everything organized, I'm sure you've seen those on cooking shows. It's really hard to see a cooking video or something without somebody using these things. To be honest with you, I don't typically use them in the way that you've probably seen them used, which is when somebody's got 10 different of the ramekins out in front of them and I've all pre-measured all their ingredients. We'll talk more about that. I don't particularly do it that way, but for some people that may be exactly what you need to do in order to stay organized with whatever it is you're cooking. They have another purpose that I'll get to in the next lesson. A meat pounder. If you don't have one, there are some things that we'll be doing that there really isn't a good substitute for this. You could probably use a small saucepan. The problem with doing that is that it's really difficult to get the direct force per square inch on the surface of a piece of meat. Why do you pound out meat? Primarily for two reasons. One is this side is good for tenderizing tougher cuts of meat, and this side is good for flattening them out. Well, why do you want to do that? I'll give you a couple of different suggestions why. The first one be classic chicken breast because it's tapered. Really, really difficult to cook a chicken breast properly with the whole breast out of the package and you don't do anything with it, because you're either going to end up with overdone on the thin end or you're going to be undercooked on the fat end. And of course, chicken really needs to be cooked all the way to 165. That means that thin end is going to end up being 185 dry and a bit tough. So the way to remedy that is cut off the smaller end, flatten it out a little bit so it's fairly equal. Do the same thing with the thicker end. The other thing is even a piece of, it could be pork, beef, chicken, whatever, is making roulades. That's when you make a piece of meat rather flat, throw some goodies inside, roll it up, and prepare it like that. And the last thing I want to talk about today is a scale. A scale like this. And I'm sure that you're asking, why do I need a scale? Well, during savory cooking, I'll admit that a scale is not quite as important as it ultimately will become when we get into breads and pastries and sweet stuff, because all that stuff needs to be measured. But during savory cooking, we will be doing some work with doughs, like a pizza dough, maybe a flatbread, puff pastry, and some things like that. Now, most of that stuff won't have to be weighed, but the other place that a scale like this comes into real good, and in order to do this, you'll want to make sure that it measures out in both ounces, grams, and pounds. Very essential. The grams, especially when you get into bread making. But for now, during savory cooking, it really helps in portioning. It also helps in breaking out packages of meat, especially, for any of you guys who shop at Costco, you buy a big package of meat. You need to divide it up into portions. A scale is a great way to do that. I use mine all the time. The other thing is understanding and learning portion control. So this can happen if you're making meatballs, for example. You want those meatballs cooking all the same duration and everything else. And the best way to do that is to make all those meatballs the same size. And the easiest way to do that is to weigh them so that they're all 1 ounce, 1.1, 1.2 ounces, whatever it is you're making, and weigh them out a little bit, roll them up. They're all the same size. They're all going to cook evenly. It's a great tool to have in the kitchen, and I highly recommend this being part of it. If you enjoyed this video and you found it helpful, please consider hitting the like button for me. And if you're new and missed the intro and this is the first lesson you've seen, I encourage you to go check out in the description, provides all the links to the academy, the curriculum, tells you all about the details and how you can take advantage of the Cook Like a Pro series. Thank you very much for all being here today.